Alrighty. Get things up and running here. Why does that look so small? All right. It's going to be good enough. Hello, everybody. Give me just one quick second here. I think I forgot to open up all my stuff. I don't know if forgot's even the right word these days. I never even do it on time. Whatever, we'll be ready in, call it 20 seconds. There we go. All right, let's get this thing going. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another week of Future Group Friday. This is I don't know if I can call it a long time stream yet. A few months running now, every Friday. With the goal essentially of keeping the community up to date on things that are going on behind the scenes with TagPro. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Cheese Doodle. I am a member of the steering committee in Future Group, which is basically the group, Future Group steering committee and development team, which is the group of players responsible for updating and communicating those updates to the game TagPro. If you don't know what TagPro is, you can find it at tagpro.gg. It's a free-to-play online capture the flag game. Short games of about 6 minutes live right in your browser. No sign-up required. tagpro.gg. So, typical stream this week. It's going to be a little bit shorter than usual, probably, just because I am tired, and I'll explain why in a minute. But we're going to start off, as usual, with some development updates. We'll go through everything that has happened over the last 7 days since our last stream. Then we will talk through some of the suggestions that we've received in the last week, which is in front of me on the candy board. And then we'll finish up with a feature building session, which is going to be a, not quite a rebuild, but maybe revisiting an older feature that I built a long time ago, just because it's come up a little bit more recently and might be relevant somewhat soon. So if anywhere along the way you have any questions for me, I've just pinned a form in the chat, and that is a form that you will find in the Reddit comment section and also in the YouTube description. If you have any questions for me to answer on stream, feel free to fill that form out and I will get to them on stream. So updates for the last week might be a little bit slower than some other weeks. If you tuned in last week, you'll recall that we were talking through some pretty significant changes to the structure of seasons, kind of removing them from the ranked format into more of a TagPro seasons idea. So a lot of what's happened over the last week is really just making sure that we were going to build that correctly so that we can just do it all at once and be done. So I'll have a few things to talk about related to that, but not the most exciting week beyond that from a development standpoint. So let's go back to a week from now. That puts us at the 27th of February. And so there we are. Yeah, so the first thing that we started after that stream last time was looking at the current leaderboards, what they do now, and trying to figure out the easiest way to have them switch over to an automatic restart. So I mentioned that's a really important part of the season's change, because we don't want to have to rely on developers going into the dev tools and manually starting each season. We want it to be more like the daily, weekly, and monthly leaderboards that will flip over to the new season every 3 months on a regular cadence. So looking at the existing leaderboards was a bit scary. Those have existed since I don't even know when, a very, very long time is the bottom line. And the way that they were built is I mean, it worked, so it's not like it's the worst thing in the world, but it wasn't like the most straightforward code to look through. So it's been untouched for a long time now, And we ended up starting off by just rewriting the way that we even handle these daily, weekly, monthly boards, because it was going to take a lot of time to figure out how to fit what we're trying to build into it, as opposed to just resurfacing the whole thing. The weirdest part, and this is a bit of a tangent, but the weirdest part that I found was that every day, week, and month, when the server starts up, it will take the current date and recalculate whatever the end date of that period is going to be, which makes sense for a daily flare because you want the flare to restart the next day. But for example, for the weekly flare, every day when we restart the servers, it looks at the first day of the next week and it recalculates it. And that's weird to do because that date's not going to change. The first day of next week is never going to move between restarts. It's always the same date. So we were saving a date to the database, but then instead of referencing whatever that date was going to be, we were fetching what the next week would be and replacing that value with the exact same value. And so it works fine because that date doesn't change. But for the way that we do it, using moment.js, it requires knowing what day it currently is and what a week the next week is going to be, which for things like days, weeks, and months is okay because you always know if you're in a current month, you always know what the next month is going to be. But there's no such thing as seasons in moment.js. They don't have a concept of 3 months from now. So at startup, if you're trying to recalculate what 3 months from now is going to be, that's going to change if you go to another month. So right now it's March. If I go to 3 months from now, you get June, but in April, it's not going to grab in June anymore. So when it's replacing that date that already existed, it's going to grab the wrong date and we would lose track of our actual season. So we had to just gut most of that code to make it just be more common sense, where you calculate it once, you save that date, and you just reference that date going forward. So much more intuitive system in the future, but it was an unfortunate level of complexity for the first step of what we're trying to do here. So hopefully that should be on its way to being done. It's not quite in yet, but it was a bad start, basically, is what I wanted to say with that. So updated that whole document, made sure that we were comparing dates correctly, and make sure that we switch the calculation as well to when boards are reset. Because right now we have boards resetting at a weird time of day. They reset at 3 p.m. Eastern. I'm not sure when or why that time was decided on. And also the daily and the weekly don't line up. Like you'll see this is 4 p.m. versus the daily, which resets at 3 p.m. Eastern. I don't think you guys can see the tooltips there. But if you hover over these, you'll see the time of day that they're going to reset. So daily and monthly are at 4 p.m., but weekly is weekly and monthly at 4 p.m., daily is at 3 p.m., and that doesn't make sense. So we want the seasonal and the daily, weekly, monthly to all flip over to 4 a.m. so that they're happening during quiet hours, so that the times of day that people are actually playing are the times of day where the stats are being recorded. And so for other regions, that won't be as intuitive because Oceania and Europe won't have the same time of day as US East. But that's where most of our players are right now. I think it makes more sense to have those calculated during the restart at 4 a.m., where it's less likely to be in the middle of a play session. Because we've seen those bug reports in the past where someone says, hey, I'm on the daily board, but I only have a certain number of points. But if I go to my profile, like it looks like I should have had more in my today category, but they didn't realize that it reset after 3 p.m. because why would it? So just little things that we can get cleaned up while we're already in there. And those fixes went in about a week ago from today. So after that, it was looking at what we talked about with increasing the number of players who are added to each flare. So if you look at the daily, we have 3 winners. Weekly, we're expanding that to 5, as I mentioned. It's hard to grind right at the end. I mean, you can't really grind at 2 p.m. any better. Like you want a whole day of grinding. That's not like the end of the night makes sense to grind until the end of the night, right? Versus grinding until 2 p.m. It's kind of weird cutoff to draw. But anyway, as I was saying, weekly we're expanding to 5, monthly to 10, seasonal will be 20 players. We wanted to make sure that when those flares are awarded, that they're added to the flare list in the correct order. Because right now, the way that we add it in is kind of random. You have 3 people who won it, but it's in any order. But if we're adding in 5 people, we want the ones who are at the top of that list to be the ones who show up here, not the ones who are at the bottom of that list of players. So we're sorting the players who are going to get the flare before we actually add them to that drop down, so that the top 3 players are the ones who show up in the flare feed. Then we had a bunch of scripts that are going to all have to be run before we actually bring the site back online. This is a 3-part thing. The first one was looking at where we keep the season 0 flare. And right now we keep the season 0 flare. This isn't relevant for anything front end, but it was work we had to do, so I'm going to talk about it. Season 0 flare was inside of a ranked flares array, essentially, which is not going to be the case anymore because it's not going to be a ranked flare. It's just a seasonal flare. So we're taking all of the flares that we had inside that and putting them into a different seasonal category, just so it's easier to look in the future and find all those flares and look in the same place instead of having to look into different corners to find information that should be related. So the first script is moving all the players who already have the flare into that new location. Second one is running the logic to make sure that players who should have earned the season 1 flare actually receive it. So as I mentioned on stream last week, I'll get to that in a second, Josh. Players who last week we talked about on stream, if you have 150 games in casual or ranked, you are going to earn that flare, but the existing logic only awards flares at the end of a season. So we're gutting the end of season logic to not award flares there because we want those flares to be awarded during the season, where if you meet the game requirement, you earn the flare in the game where you met the requirement. But season 1 has already happened, so we can't have it progressively because players have already passed that cutoff. They're not going to go back to get whatever that flare was. So we have to run a script that says, how many games did you play? Did you cross over the required number? If so, award you that flare. But what I talked about on stream last week was that we're awarding it to players who have played 150 games combined, ranked, and casual in any queues, any regions, which is fine, except for the fact that we had already announced a 10 game per week cutoff for the season 1. So if you were playing only ranked neutral flag or only ranked capture the flag, and you played more than or greater than 120 games by the end of the season, which will be 12 weeks long, that could be your entire count. So maybe you only played 120 games, like Alpha Churro, for example. He has 134 games only in ranked capture the flag North America. Alpha Churro does not have any other games in any other regions, no casual, nothing else. They've only played 134 games. So that does not meet our requirement for 150 games in season 1. But we had previously announced that you only needed 10 games per week in a queue to be active and to receive that flare. So Alpha Churro, even though they did not meet the 150, should still be receiving the season 1 flare because they met what we had previously announced. So we have to have two different checks. We have to look at all the games and see, did you cross 150? If not, and you only had somewhere between 120 and 150, were those 120 games all in the same game mode and region, meaning that you are active? And if so, then you should also be awarded that season 1 flare. So an annoying edge case, but it is more important that these players get what they were promised. And so it took some time to get that all good to go. At the same time, I think Moosin, if he's watching, is the one who realized this. There were still a couple lingering players who played Season 0 games and did not receive the Season 0 flare. And I think what happened was that the end of season logic that we mentioned already was bugged. That's why a bunch of players were missing it initially. We had run a script to fix that. I think that script still missed a couple more players. So we found 32 players who had played at least one ranked game in Season 0 but did not receive their flare. And I think the majority of those players were players who had played a game, the game had voided, and that was the only game that they played. But they were not the ones who voided that game. And so when we said that you should receive a Season 0 flare for playing any ranked TagPro game, you did play a ranked TagPro game. So we found those 32 players. We found a way to reliably locate them, essentially. And so we're going to make sure those players also have their Season 0 flare. Helpful that Moosin was one of the players affected by this, so that's why it came up. But that should be the last of the Season 0 flare issues that we had from way back. So 3 different scripts that have to check 3 different things, but all of them will result in players who should have flares actually getting those flares. So after that, it was a lot of just discussion of who's working on what. So I'm not going to go through it again, but 5 or 6 different things have to happen that are all independent projects. So we're making sure each developer has one of those things to get them all done together so that we can stay on the timeline for next Saturday, I guess, would be the end of season. What did you say, Saturday or Friday? Now I'm forgetting. I think I talked about this on stream last week, but the start of the season should be on the 14th, did I say? So the end of the season will be on the 13th, or is it 14th and 15th? Here it is. Yeah, season 1 ends March 14. So the end of the season will be Saturday, and then the start of the season would be Sunday for the next season. So we'll have a little bit of downtime between the two, about 24 hours, but that's about it. Otherwise, things should keep moving. So now to talk about why I am a little disheveled and a little confused about what's going on. It's because I was just out of the country and I didn't tell anybody that I was going because I didn't want it to seem like I wasn't working on things, because I was, but I was down in Peru for a couple of days, about 5 days, which was a very interesting experience. So I'm just getting back into things. I got home yesterday afternoon and just trying to put all the ducks back in a row so we can get things done on time. So there was some stuff moving while I was out. I was able to check in for the nights I didn't lose Wi-Fi, but that's why today I'm a little frazzled as we go. So Josh, you said they're just giving out flares back in the day you had to actually earn it. I agree with that, but the amount of work it takes to earn a monthly flare, I think even right now is so high that most players don't even consider going for it. A couple players get it just by nature of playing a lot, but I don't like, other than this new player, which is really exciting, by the way, this player earned it because they're very new. Most of these players just kind of end up in that position. They're not trying for it. And I think that if we made it slightly more attainable, top 10, you're going to see a lot more players actually trying to go for it. And that's kind of more what it's for, right? You want people motivated to do these things, including the seasonal flare with that larger group. So I think it'll go well to increase it. I don't think it's going to diminish the value of the flare. I think people are still going to consider monthly pretty challenging to get, but I think that it's going to be just a little bit more within reach and a little more enjoyable to earn. What was I there for? I was visiting a friend who has been on I don't even know what to call it, a world tour, I guess. She's been down there for a few months now, and two of us just went down to visit for a few days, which was it was fun. It was fun. Very different place than Boston, Massachusetts for sure, but good stuff. So what kind of friend? Not just a friend from graduate school, that's all. Just a good friend. I remember first daily flare, I thought you had to get first place. Yeah, that's just unrealistic. No one's going to want to do that if they have to get whatever the number Liddy had last month. Like, it's too high a bar. Bars should be attainable. Even if they're challenging, they should still be attainable. All right. So that's literally it for progress in the last week. Nothing else has actually been pushed and committed because a lot of stuff is waiting for review right now. We've got 2 branches that are being held for the next release, which will be the same release as the in-game shop. I talked about these last week, but just to reiterate, we have the respawning on player balls that we have to test first, decide if we hate it or not. And then that's respawn indicators on player balls, so you can see when the player is going to respawn based on your flashing or your pizzas, whatever you have selected. And the other one was the head-to-head stats, which would be a separate tab on the profile, and then also in the launcher displaying players you are very good with or against. So those are both going to be held for the next release. We have a shorter term thing going in tonight for the map test committee. One thing that they're going to announce themselves over the weekend, and one thing that is just helping the MTC aggregate stats more appropriately so they can see how many times trial maps have actually been selected in their game. So those should both go in tonight. An announcement from the MTC hopefully in the next few days about the other thing that I'm not telling you about. And then after that, we have a different hotfix that's going to go in the next couple of days, which is going to go in silently, which is just making sure that we wait for players who are sent to spectate, so that if they are supposed to be in a ranked game, we are waiting for them to connect to their ranked or to their casual lobby they're spectating. Let me back up. 2 ranked players, one is waiting for the other. The one who is in the game gets back to the game, gets sent into spectate. This player is going to wait for them to get there before going into a different ranked game, instead of this player getting sent and this player getting sent to a ranked game without them. So it's just keeping players in the same tier together when expected, instead of it looking like you got queue skipped because somebody got sent to spectate. I explained that more last week. If you want details, I can find a link for you. But those are all things that we're not going to wait for. The head-to-head stats and the respawn indicators we are going to wait for. Those are going to go in with the shop, which will be the next actual release. So if you have questions about that timeline, let me know. It's a little confusing right now, just because we have different things that are on different timelines that are all kind of important, but some are just slightly more important. Like obviously the season 1 fixes have to go in by next week because that's when we said we're going to end the season. So those are definitely top priority, and then we'll work our way down from there. Other things that have been moving behind the scenes, there is a standing request from I don't even know what to call them. It's not technically MLTP, it's not technically Region Wars, but players who are involved in those are wondering if it's possible to have a Dallas server spun back up. The answer to that question is actually yes, we can get Dallas up. The reason we don't have a Dallas server right now is because players found that connection to Dallas wasn't as good as connection to Chicago overall in terms of stability, packets dropped and all that. But the provider we use does have a Dallas location. So if they want to have Dallas as an option, they can have it as long as they're willing to front the money that we would have to put into that, which we've talked about already. And we'll have more updates on that in a couple of weeks probably. So that's been moving. Then we have a script, or no, not a script. It's a replay extension. I think if players are familiar with the Google Chrome extension TagPro Replays, a player who hasn't been around in a while joined back up and decided to try to fix it. It's not currently working yet, but if you are interested in revisiting that script, I'll put a link in the chat here. This link will take you to a GitHub page where you can, I think, install that as your Chrome extension. It's this old TagPro Replays where you would have that button next to your Play Now button that would have your replays, where you could press a button and clip 30-second replays and then export them pretty quickly. We looked at potentially integrating that into the site. It's a horrifying mess of code to look at. I think this player is just using an LLM to try to pull it back together, but not currently working. If you want to help them get it to a point where it's working, that is a thing you can explore. I would come to the TagPro Discord and talk about that if you have any questions about it. So again, not an official dev thing. We're not working on that with them, but that is something happening if it interests you. Then we've got, is that it? That might be it, actually. I thought there was one other thing that I wanted to talk about. But... oh yeah, just discussion about flares. We have a couple of seasonal flare ideas that we've been working on. Some of them are very cool. They just don't quite fit what we're going for the seasonal flare, because we're trying to think about the progression. Right? You have daily is a ribbon, weekly is a medal, monthly is a crown. What is above crown, but still kind of on brand, right? Like Moose had mentioned this as well. It's like if you go one step beyond crown, it doesn't quite make sense as putting something in between medal and crown. I think there's more of a gap between these than there is space above this to add something. But it's kind of, you don't really have a choice in the matter. You can't move the crown to the seasonal and then put a different flare for monthly. That's just bad continuity. So we're not going to do that. But host a design competition. Like we could, but I don't know if we're going to get much like buy-in on that. It's a small thing. It's a single flare. We have a lot of ideas for it. We just need to actually make one and make it look good. So we're still playing around with it. If you have any really top-notch ideas for something like that, feel free to reach out. But otherwise, we'll figure something out, and I'm sure it'll be great. This is all I'm going to say there. Yeah, okay, that's it for development updates for the last week. So let's shift over to our candy board. Oh, update on the candy board stuff. We have it's ready to go in terms of feedback and testing. We just have to get it to actually work on production now. So we're probably a week or two away now from the replacement feedback board, which will give me a lot more freedom to add tickets or what do you call it, like updates back onto these things, because I missed them and I'm very sad that I don't have them, because now I can't tell where I left off last week. It's so hard to figure out what the last thing was. So let's go through this now, see what we can do. I think add clutch time to casual sounds familiar as the last thing that we talked about. That was from Yowza. Does that mean this is the newest one? It is. All right, so from Liddy Lid, a note or tag system for players viewable from the in-game scoreboard. I currently mark noteworthy players by muting them at the end of the game. However, I have a range of reasons as to why. Would it be possible to get some kind of note feature so I can tap a quick 1 or 2 words for a player and be able to see that note next to their name in the future, essentially? That's an interesting question. So this reminds me, Discord has a very similar feature to this. If you right click on a player's name on Discord and open up their profile, there is a little notes section, I think. And I can't find it. Hold on. I swear this exists. Am I crazy? Maybe I just can't see it because I'm streaming. I'm gonna be really upset if this is gone. Big dummy. Hold on, Grant. That's rude. Can someone confirm this exists? Because I used to use this all the time, and now I can't find it at all. And now I'm worried that it got removed or something like that. Anyone, please? Hold on. If I disable streamer mode, does it pop back up? Okay, yeah. So it says note visible only to you. Click to add note. It was a Reddit enhanced suite feature. Yeah, so it's existed before basically. So I don't hate this suggestion. I think that it is pretty low stakes for us to do because it's something only you see. So if you don't like it, just don't use it, kind of thing. I think the real question is that does this turn into a little bit of a harassment thing? One of the issues that I have with this, just thinking out loud, is that with the personal mute feature right now, we do have it apply to alternate accounts, alternate IP addresses, and all of that. So if you mute somebody who's logged in and they log out and keep typing, you're still not going to see their messages. And we indicate that on the scoreboard because their name is still italicized. So you know to some degree that because you muted this player, that logged out player is the same person. But we kind of hide behind the obscurity of the fact that you're going to mute more than one person. So you don't know for sure that Sunball6 in your game is Cheese Doodle. Because, well, I don't play log out anyway, but you don't know it's that exact person. You just know it's somebody who you've muted in the past. Whereas if we have it be player specific and you put a note on Cheese Doodle, like Grant said, that says Big Dummy, and then you end up in Sunball6 and you see Big Dummy, you know that that is Cheese Doodle. Does that undermine the anonymity of the system? Is that something that needs to be protected? Is that something that's okay to undermine? I'm not sure, because we also do the same thing with alternate accounts. Like you won't see chat from alternate accounts if they join a game either. It's all together, but you don't know which alternate account, like which player that alternate account actually is. So I think if we did notes, yeah, I think it would have to be IP and account specific because. Yeah, I don't think it has to be. Yeah, that's what I'm kind of going through, Grant. I don't think it has to be tied to alts because that's just. I feel like we open up too many possibilities for harassment there. Because maybe somebody is logged out because they don't want to be talked to. I don't know. Like that's the whole point of the system, really, is to give players the ability to not have to be on their, like, their same personality kind of thing. Like maybe like Lucky Spammer, for example, he plays with a white name all the time because he doesn't want people every game going, "Hey, Lucky, what's up?" kind of stuff, which is nice that people do that, but it does get kind of tiring sometimes to just expect people expecting a response from you for certain things that you might not want to engage with at that moment. So I think it would have to be account specific, and then it would have to be reserve name specific too, because for the exact reason I just said, if you're playing with a white name, the whole point is that people don't know it's you, whereas that note feature allows you to figure out that it is somebody. So at that point, the feature that he's asking for kind of gets lost, because I'm assuming most of the reason here is that they want to know something specific about that person. And the reason they need that note is because they're seeing names that are not that person who are muted, and they want to know which one of those people they muted it is. So, am I making sense? Like, I feel like the idea of what Liddy is going for is the thing that we would be removing the ability to do with the adjustments that I've just talked about. At which point, why bother doing the system at all? Because the whole use case has been undermined for the protection of whatever. I feel like I'm losing people here. Like, if you have a system that's only attached to a reserve name, you already know who that person is with the reserve name. So yeah, that's my point, Grant. I don't think it would be. I think the whole point is that he wants to know, if I see Sunball6, oh, this is the person who walked back a neutral flag one time, so watch out for that. But we're not going to show them that because it's just going to be Sunball6. And unless they've marked that specific IP address, it's not going to have a note. like it's worse for ranked, fine, because reserve names are locked, all that. But if you have reserve names in the same, you know those players after a certain point. Like you're not going to lose track. Like I feel like the amount of note writing you would have to do for it to be significant in like a ranked game is just kind of ridiculous, because you know after a certain point that I play well with this player plays a certain play style. Like there's no unknowns there, and the unknowns that there are the players you wouldn't have written notes for in the first place. Like if you've gone to the lengths of writing a note on a person to say this is XYZ player, this is how they play, that means you know that already. So the next time you see that name, I don't know why you would need that note to reference unless it's been a couple of months. And then if it's been a couple of months, how likely is that to still be true a couple months later, right? Would it still be useful? I don't know if I do, Grant. I just feel like like at face value, this seems fine, but the more I unpack it, the more I don't like it. I just feel like it's not useful in a limited time frame. I'm kind of torn on this one. This is a tough start. We have 1 million concurrent players. Yeah, but are you going to write notes for 1 million different people? You're only going to write the stuff down for people who really stand out to you in a way that you feel is important to remember. But if they're already standing out in a way that you feel is important to remember, why are you forgetting who they are? Like, what is the edge of players who you're like, oh, I should keep this in mind about this person, but you're not going to remember it the next time that you see them, right? Like, is it like this person is bad at regrab and you're like, you've forgotten that? But I just feel like this is more likely to end up with a bunch of like half comments that are out of date and don't mean anything, so you just stop using them, than it is to actually be something people kind of engage with and use. I think I talked myself out of it. I don't like it. I like the idea, but I don't think I like any reasonable path to executing it. So I've talked myself into a no on this. Yeah, I think, well, like Grant said, we'll leave it as a question instead of a hard no, but would you mind elaborating on possible uses for this feature? So Moosin, you're saying instead of that's a different suggestion than Moosin. He's saying he wants a text that says whatever question, like a comment about that person. You're saying color system, which is different. Yeah, it's like but like, is that gonna promote harassment again? Like you mark players as red if they're bad? Like what's? I don't quite see the value. I don't quite see it. I feel like it's close. I can't quite convince myself that I like it. Possible use for this feature. This would have to be reserved name or IP specific, not able to use it to identify alternate accounts. Identify, nice, good. Which may undermine what you are hoping to do with it. Got to go. Moosin, no. All right, we'll revisit that next week if I get a response. Yeah, red equals troll. I get makes sense, but is it actually useful? I don't know. I'm not sold. Anyway, where were we? A way to see all team group chat in the game while locking the ability to chat myself. I have chat visibility unchecked, which prevents me from typing in game, which is what I want. For reasons no text box appears. So they want the ability to type to not be connected to the ability to see chat. So right now we have show all chat, team chat, group chat. Does that hide the chat box? Now I'm curious, if I deselect all of these and I go to a group, I mean, the text box still shows up, so I don't think that. Huh. I think I'm missing something here. So it's saying I have them all unchecked. No text box appears when I hit enter, but I just did that. It does appear. So I'm not following this. Am I reading something wrong here? It says no text box appears when I hit enter or the T key, but I just showed that it does. But the message that you send does not appear. That we've confirmed afterward. Am I missing something? I feel like I'm missing something. Test. Test. They all show up. Even the mod stuff. Well, the mod stuff shows up anyway, but yeah, those messages are being sent, even though they're not showing up in the actual game. So I think I need clarification on this one too, because that's not... What am I missing here? As far as I can tell, the text box still appears when you have chat visibility disabled. But I think what they're really going for here is that, yeah, I think you might be right, Grant. So no text box appears when I hit enter at the T. But when you hit the T key, that is the text box that pops up. It's even if I typed, which means he didn't type. Okay, but anyway, the suggestion is, would it be possible to get a checkbox that enables it? So they want the ability to type or not type while still being able to see or not see chat. I think that suggestion at face value is fine. So let's talk about that. You want to separate the ability to... Did that show up, by the way? It did. Okay, there we go. Oh, wait, I still have the setting disabled. Does this show up here? Yes, it does. So all those messages are still being sent. That all works fine. So I think what the actual suggestion is here is that when I have my profile settings for chat disabled, can that be or disconnected from my ability to send messages? So maybe they still want to see everybody else's chat, but they don't want to be able to respond. Some players do that because they find that they don't do well when they're typing the whole game, which is appropriate. They're kind of muting themselves, essentially. That disconnected from being able to see messages. Yeah, I'm kind of with you, Grant. So I think that we can make a ticket for this. Let's figure out how to word this properly. I think it's going to be allow self-muting while still viewing chat. And then right now, currently, players can show, hide all team group chat in profile settings. This stops messages from appearing in game, but has no effect on the ability to send messages. So what would we want the actual options to be? It would be all of these and then enable chat, I guess, would be another option. Add a new checkbox for enable chatting or chat, whatever, which is enabled or selected by default when deselected, pressing the, would it be enabled team, all, and group? Like, would you separate that out? Because if I only want to be able to talk to my team, but I don't want to be able to talk to the other team, or vice versa, is that something worth breaking down the differences between? Because we have those options for seeing it, so why wouldn't you have the same options for using it? I think that it's worth I'm going to do 3 new checkboxes for enable all team group chat. Pressing the corresponding key does not open the text box. Oh no, it can still open the chat box, right? Because you still want to be able to see the chat history of that game, and you see that by pressing enter right now, or T or G. So you still want the ability to do that in case you wanted to scroll through the chat, but you don't want the actual typing part of that to appear. So still opens the chat history box, but does not offer the input option to send a message. And that way they can still see everything. They can't type any messages. Yeah. Am I missing anything here? I feel like that's pretty straightforward. Wanting to be able to hit enter in a replay so I can scroll back and read chat. Nope, don't do that. Just in games. Team, all, group. I think that's everything that we need it to be. So that would be an enhancement. And that's a pretty low effort thing to do. And then we have a relevant canny request. Is here. What the heck? I feel like I'm missing something here. I was just talking to somebody else about this, if they wanted to not chat. I feel like I got it. I feel like we got it. Let's go for it. That said, ticket has been submitted internally to allow users to disable or ability to type without removing their ability to see chat from the game. Okay. Got that. After that, we have link to fortunate maps. I think we already have a ticket for this, right? Link to fortunate maps are high resolution image in maps page. Maps page looks great, so Josh is already lying to us. The preview image links to is low res and bad. So I think what he's saying is this here is not good enough, which is reasonable. So we already have a ticket, I believe, to oops. What is it for? It's fortunate maps. Display maps ID of each map in the maps tab. Yeah, so the only question with this is how we would do it. It's been around for a long time, but we want to be able to see which map ID you're looking at. And yeah, I think we can just link this one, and that's good enough because it's the same idea. Do we have it? I feel like we opened a ticket for this at some point, though. That's why I'm. Yeah, we do have a ticket for this. We say add FMID and date of rotation to rotation maps so that Display map ID of each map on the maps tab. Okay, this is the one I just found. Yeah, okay, okay. So let us similar request to include FM ID to each map in the maps tab. Did I already explain that you can remove small and get a higher res image? No, I did not. Aha! Look at that. In the meantime, you can remove small from the URL of the low res image to see a higher resolution version of the same map. Thank you, Musin. That's good to have. Okay. Next up, we've got revisit the no kiss question. Rain, why must you do this to me? I strongly believe no kiss should be added to ranked. Last time it was discussed, a response was not opposed, but the game is not in a place where progressing the meta is critical. Will be revisited. La la la. Given the recent changes to the way the ELA system works, we don't have an ELA system. Having no kiss enabled in ranked would be a good idea. I'm sure it would be pretty enthusiastic. Uniform. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about no kiss. I think that my previous statement, which is probably exactly what's quoted here, still holds true. Progressing the meta is still not the main focus of the site right now. The main focus of the development on the game is getting the game into a place where it can be marketed to a larger audience. That does not necessarily mean that we can't progress the meta. It just means that if we're going to progress the meta, it's going to be for another reason than just for the sake of doing it, if you will. Now, for my personal opinion, with no kiss, I think that it was a really, really good change for the North American competitive leagues. I think it made a lot of sense when they added it. I think that it was the right call because a lot of the issue the league was having at the time was related to player enthusiasm. People were kind of in a monotonous state, like it was the same season over and over. People were a little bit bored with the format. I think that for the purpose of change, it was a very good change. And I think that because it was a well-received change and players enjoyed that kind of change of pace that it brought the game, that people now think that it's kind of a better game mode. But from an actual quality of the games that are played with those settings question, I don't think it actually changes the meta, progresses the meta all that much. I think that it changes the meta. But from my personal perspective, having watched games before and after and played in both game modes, it feels more like a lateral change. And what I mean by that is, yes, it is different. Yes, it changes how the game works in certain settings. There are different things that you do at certain points of the game that players find enjoyable or not enjoyable depending on those things. I don't think that it is necessarily harder to be good at one or the other version of that game. I think that some of the arguments that come up in response to that are the OD, where you can grab and then kiss and prevent a cap. I think that those situations are a little bit harder, but I don't think that that actually means that the meta is more advanced. I think that it's just a different moment of the game. Like there are other moments of the game where as a flag carrier, you can do a little bit more. You can boost into the other team. I think that's a good mechanic. I think that that's more engaging for flag carriers, but I'm not sold on the fact that it's actually a better version of the game. It's just different. And I think that when you take something like that and you kind of, I guess force is the right word, onto the whole community, people who weren't playing that way, and you say that this is because we are progressing the meta, I just don't think that it's actually going to work that way. Like people are going to push back against it. That's fine. We can live with people pushing back against a different setting. But if there's not a good counter argument to why they're pushing back, why are you doing it, right? Because if you're saying that we're doing this so that the top skill players like, what is progressing the meta, right? The reason you would progress the meta is because you have a ceiling effect where you have so many players who are at the top that the difference between them at that point isn't really their play style. It isn't their ability. It's really just like ping is the only thing different because everyone knows the exact play to do in the exact moment. So that's when you say, okay, the meta is stale. Everyone's doing the same thing all the time. We need to increase the ceiling. We need to progress the meta so that the players who are actually the best have the ability to show that they are the best by exploiting these mechanics that we have added. I don't feel like that happens with no kiss. That's my actual answer right there. I just feel like it's different. It changes things so that you don't have that monotony, yes, but it doesn't actually raise the ceiling to a degree that players are able to differentiate themselves because they are or are not good at the no kiss mechanic. Am I losing anyone? I think you can't do no kiss in ranked and not pubs. Yeah, so Moose, to your point, if you're going to make this change, it has to be site-wide. You can't just do this in one game mode or the other. Where was it going with that? Yeah, it would have to be across the whole thing. And people are saying, like, why aren't you standardizing the league and the game? I've had this whole spiel before. The leagues are not official. They are not our responsibility for maintaining and updating and all that. They can do what they want, and that's better for them because they have the freedom to do things like no kiss to keep it fresh for their players, but that can't decide how we're going to progress the meta in the game itself, the base game. They can be related. They can try things. We can say, I like that, and we can use it. Like clutch time, for example. That started with the league. The league's like, yeah, this is good. And we said, okay, ranked is going to have that now. And I really do like clutch time. I think it was the right call. And as I've talked about in the past, that will make its way to casual eventually. But no kiss, I don't get that same drive, that same this needs to happen kind of vibe from it. It also wouldn't make it uniform between ranked and league TagPro because of the whole timers thing. Yeah, there are other differences for the exact same reason. There are other differences between the leagues and the game that there's no reason to bring one over to the other right now. I want to progress the meta with maps, but most competitive mind players hate that for some reason. Well, you bring up a good point, Musin, which is that if we're saying no kiss raises the ceiling, even if that's your argument and you want to stick with it, you say that no kiss changes the meta, it increases the ceiling and makes it easier to differentiate players at the top. I don't feel like no kiss is where we would actually want to explore that. I feel like new tile types or new, what was the other one? Shoot, there was one other thing I wanted to add there, but tile types is a more obvious example, so we'll stick with it. Adding new tile types is also a way to increase the meta. It raises the ceiling because you can do different things with different elements, and you add in a different component to the game where the playstyle is the same, the physics are the same, but you have these new things that you have to learn how to use, when to use, and all of that. New power-ups, that was the other one people were talking about. You added like a fourth power-up option that does something new. That is also raising the ceiling because there's another mechanic that you have to figure out how it works. So if we're saying the goal is to raise or increase or change the meta, I feel like I would rather explore power-ups and tile types than this specific no kiss, which I don't actually see as raising that ceiling. So that's my long-winded answer. Intimate map knowledge being a part of players' overall skill. Map flexibility, learning speed as a part of players' overall skill. Yeah, but think about like if you are really good with bombs and really good with boosts, that is something that sets you apart. So if you add in another dynamic element, I don't know what it would be. Use the cannon example from TagPro next. That is a different thing you have to get good at and be good at using. The best players in the game are going to figure that out sooner and more accurately than other players. That's raising the ceiling for them because they can figure that out and use it much more reliably as other players take longer to catch up. So I don't think no kiss is that because everyone kind of figures it out at the same time. It's just a different way of playing in certain situations. It's not actually raising the meta to me. Long-winded answer. So, to actually answer Rain here, given the recent changes to the way the system works, I thought it would be worth discussing if it would be a good idea. So, I don't think I can concisely summarize what I just said, but the original stance of progressing the meta not being our current focus holds true right now. That said, if progressing the meta does become a priority, we would focus more on tile and power-up changes first rather than gameplay changes. I am of the opinion that no kiss is different, but not necessarily, I can never spell this word correctly, not necessarily a higher ceiling to master. But not necessarily a higher ceiling to master in a way that brands it as progressing the meta. All right, there's that. When are we adding PvE to ranked? I don't think that's going to be happening. What I do want to explore with that, different tangent, but you've given me a moment. People have talked about different ranked queues right now. We've got capture the flag, we've got neutral flag. People have brought up like an egg ball queue. We have seasons. Seasons are 3 months long. I feel like there is some room to explore temporary queues, where you say that in season 3, maybe instead of neutral flag, you have an egg ball queue. But then season 4, you go back to having a neutral flag queue. Then season 5, maybe you have a racing queue, and you take out, unless you can support 3 queues at once, kind of thing. And so that the ability to kind of keep it fresh, where you're adding in temporary queues, but not expecting one queue to last forever, kind of thing. Like if it's on a rotation, you're like, oh, I'm interested in trying that out. Maybe for 3 months I will, but after that, like, I'm not going to play it indefinitely. Like capture the flag is the core of the game. People are here for CTF. I think that neutral flag, there is still a similarly dedicated section of players. So I don't think that removing neutral flag is really a great idea right now. But instead of saying we have to permanently add in every new queue that we add, I think that having the ability to do a temporary queue for a season or two would allow some things to be a little bit more fresh without kind of, I don't know what to call it. Not putting all your eggs in that basket, I guess, is the easiest way. People would riot. I don't think people would riot to a temporary thing. I think for a permanent thing, maybe, if they didn't like that queue and it was going to draw players away from the main queues, I think that would be the... Oh, yeah. I think ideally, perfect world, you have CTF, you have NF, and then you have your third rotational queue until we find one that people are like, this is the best thing ever. Then maybe you have 3 permanent and your 4th one can be the rotational. I haven't thought about it that much. That's just an idea that's popped into my head in the past. And I'm here to talk, so I talk. OFM queue. Yeah, like that could be a thing that you do for a season. Maybe you have your 2v2 dual queue or something. I don't know. But anyway, Moosin says Spike Maze stuff with records. Yeah, that's we have a spec for that. Time trials with both regular and gravity maps is an open spec that we have. I think we talked about that on the Miro board way back. Yeah, anyway, I think that if we did that, egg ball would be the first thing we try it with, just to see how it goes. But again, we're not really there yet. Just a thing to talk about. So I've responded to Rain here. Let's go back to here. TagPro Docker client. What am I looking at here? The biggest threat to our win percentage, it's the boss walking in? What? Okay. Can someone translate this for me? Because I am not following what is being said to me. They want a Docker image that you play within your terminal? What does that mean? What is within your terminal? It's a joke? Okay, because I'm not following it at all. Okay, I'm not gonna respond to this. I don't know what I'm looking at. Okay. I think you can add an egg ball queue as long as you don't let people only queue for that, maybe. I think that you would have to allow that for the same reason that you allow CTF or NF only. I think that you just have to have a larger player base before you explore that. Okay, sound effect themes, sounds, fonts. It struck me that TagPro has many, many visual themes, but not sound themes or sound effects. I don't hate the sound effects of TagPro. You're in the minority there, Xenu. But the woo-woo, yeah, can get annoying after a while. I struggled to understand the different pop sounds. Yeah, that's reasonable. So I think that the only real news I can share here is that we are exploring something along these lines. Let me see if I have a ticket that I can show you guys or not. But sound redesign and rebuilding has definitely been explored before. The other part of that was making sure that sounds are customizable to the same degree that texture packs are adjustable. Kind of saying that I want to choose the file that plays every time that I do X, Y, or Z. I think that's pretty in line with what we do for the rest of the site. So I don't see an actual ticket for it though. Huh. Does it sound pack? Even if we don't have a ticket for this, I know that we have something in progress for this, so I'm not going to worry too much about making a ticket right now. Is it in the document, Yalpa? Thank you. So I'm just going to say right now, planned the ability for players to pick from preset options or upload, or potentially upload. I don't know if we decided on that yet. Potentially upload their own sounds has been in progress behind the scenes. Sense scenes, hopefully updates on the way in a future release. So the problem with that is it's somewhat tied to the site redesign. Not entirely, but it's kind of in that same pile of things that need to be moved forward. So we will get to it eventually. I just can't say exactly when we have that. So sound packs, there is currently a script. You can reach out to Yalpa if you want to help with testing that. So if you want to have your own custom sound packs on your screen, fine. But for integrating it to the site where anybody can just go in and change what they want, that is not a thing that we've ever added to the site itself yet. Of course it's Yalpa. It's always Yalpa. If it's script related, it's probably Yalpa. Okay, what else we got? Future, yep. So we got bug reports now. Do we get any of those? And then we'll move on to our feature building for the week. We're already over an hour. I've been yammering. When was this submitted? Yeah, we got that covered. Tie-breaking logic for map selection might be bugged. Oh, I see. So this player was reporting that in launchers in the map voting page, they were getting the countdown down to 0, then they were just kind of stuck in their launcher. That is not actually related to the map voting. That was a different bug. We did find the source of that bug. That bug has been patched. I have not seen any reports of that happening since. If you are still seeing this, where you vote on a map and you're on the launcher page and the clock gets to 0 and it does not send you into your ranked game, please let us know, because we think we fixed that bug. It was related to server slots being available and the game trying to send players to a game server that wasn't actually able to accept them. So they were getting stuck in the joiner and just kind of hung there indefinitely. And then things were crashing for other reasons. It was a mess. We fixed it. It was a really technical thing, but that should not be happening anymore. So if you're seeing this, please let us know. This bug should be fixed. If you are still seeing this happen, please open another ticket so we can take a closer look, because that should be good to go. So that brings us through all of our candy stuff. Again, the candy board still a little bit less effective than I want it to be because of the loss of the back end, but we have something on the way for replacing that, hopefully in a couple of weeks here. So let's move on to our feature building sessions. So I had a very brief meeting yesterday. Sorry, Bash responded to the ticket that I just made for the chat, and he doesn't think that it should be team or all specific, but we'll talk about that later internally. Sorry, my train of thought today is atrocious. It was a question about the ability for players to pick a bunch of maps they want to play and just play all of them. So an example use case is maybe you're doing a time trial thing and you want to get your best time on 5 different maps maybe. Instead of having to go back to group every time, pick your settings, pick your map, and then click play now again, if you had some ability to queue up all of the maps that you're going to play at once, it would be easier to just type that in and go and do your thing. You're late again. Well, welcome, Croissant. You made it. That's all that matters. If you haven't followed, you can get an email notification when I go live. Or you can follow the Discord event. If you're in the Discord, there is a recurring weekly event. You can mark yourself as interested for that, and you'll get a Discord notification when I go live instead. If you need help with that, just reach out. But with the addition of presets, we kind of solved half of that issue, right? Instead of having to go to the group and set up everything that you want to do in that group, you can put in your group preset and get whatever settings you want in your group. I forget what this was. Oh, what is that? Oh, it's from the bots. I made a little spike thing for my bots when I was training them. That's really funny. So you can put in it, get your settings. So that's easy for one map. Maybe you wanted to do that for multiple maps. And another example of that would be maybe you are in North American League TagPro and you want to play a 7-map series and you have all the maps picked out. You know what the settings are going to be. You just have to set them up between each game. But instead of having to do that between every game, what if you just had a preset for all 7 of them done before the series even starts and you could just paste that in? So it's a spec essentially for a full series instead of just for a single game. And I really thought that we had already done this on stream, but I couldn't find a document that actually had this information. So I found the ticket that I made a very long time ago. So we're going to go look at that ticket. We're going to update it, make sure that it's a little bit modern than it was. And that's going to be it for the feature building session this week. But I think this is a pretty cool thing. I thought about it a long time ago. And we're going to pick it apart now and see what happens. So, would I need to go back to group for those that would need P grips? Yes, so that is part of the spec here. So this is what I built, and we're going to go through it a little bit at a time. Let me remove Catalyst from this because he's obviously not working on that. And let me remove it from that. Okay. So let me get a group open in the meantime. So this is saying that we want to create game queue button to the left of the launch game button. I think we're going to already decide not to do that, because why would we put it there? So if we're in a group, we want to make a preset. What you do is you go through and you pick all your settings, and then you click group preset and you click generate, and it makes a preset out of the settings that you have there. So I think that can stay the same. I think that what we want to do is build off of the preset logic that we have in the preset UI and turn that into a little bit more. So any ideas for what to do at the very start? How do you create a game queue? I think that you can use the same window. Would you divide it into 2 different options? Would you have a separate button for a game queue? I thought I was going to have a better answer for this off the top of my head. Starting is always the hardest part. Where do you put this? So I think that what I wanted to do was have a list of all the games that are going to be played down here. We've got a nice open empty space down here. I think that what you can do is have a different box for each game that's coming up and a preview of that map in that box. But how do you actually add things to that box? So I think that what I was saying here, that is instead of, so you pick your maps, instead of saying launch game, if you want to save this map to the first game slot, instead of launch game, you would click on add to game queue, which is to the left of it. When will the map selector get fixed? What's broken about the map selector? Looks like it's working to me. Elaborate. What's broken there? It jumps around when you type a map name. No, it doesn't. I mean, I'm using it right now. What am I missing? Homic has a terrible time searching maps. I'm not... What? Geo Koala? What am I missing here? Type in Open Field Masters. It's working fine. Type 1, danger zone. Type and then try to click. Why are you clicking? Just press enter. Okay. I'm not seeing what the... How is it broken? What do you want me to do to recreate this? If I... Use your mouse. Okay, what do you want me to type before I use my mouse? Let's go all the way to the top. Let's get random. What do I type before I use my mouse? Because I can use my mouse fine. You said Open Field Masters? Is that what just happened there? Okay, so there it goes. We're getting it now. So if I type OP and then I wait, it loses the search. Right? So that's working fine. Okay. So it does work, but something about the search box is losing the search that you have if you wait too long. Interesting. So there's some kind of timer that's losing whatever you typed. After a certain number of seconds. Is that an exact statement? Does it work with all? Interesting. So the whole search is gone. 1, 2. So it's a 2-second timer that loses whatever your search bar was. Oh no, it can be faster than that. So it's an inconsistently length time. Loss of whatever you searched. Look at that. So my problem is that I was typing the whole thing out and I was just pressing enter and it gets whatever you want right there. But that's because I'm doing it too quickly because I'm used to doing this. So if you're slower and you don't use the enter key, even though you should, you will lose your search. Okay, so let's make a ticket for that while we're here. Let me make sure it doesn't exist already first. Drop down, I guess would be the name of it. Drop down. Yeah, I don't see a ticket for this. Okay. Map, drop down, search, clears itself after typing. This is a bug. When searching the maps drop down in private groups, if a map is not selected quickly, variable timing, the search bar or the search stops filtering the list of maps. Reproduce by typing OPE and then waiting without clicking or pressing enter. The search results will appear as expected, but then disappear and show the full map dropdown. Okay. Tried to gaslight. I mean, it was working fine, but yeah, didn't tell me to wait. That should be good enough there. So that ticket exists now. Okay, so back to what we were talking about though, with our actual feature building. We are saying that if you have made a map, you like this map, you're ready to use this map, but you want to have a second game in your series, what do you click to do that? And I think the answer is originally what I had put here. It says create game queue. I think instead of that, we could say add to queue, maybe. So instead of launch game, you have add to queue. Should that be above launch game, next to launch game, below it? Maybe like a little half button next to launch game where you add it to a queue? I think I like that better, like a smaller button. Because what we're trying to do is saving a map as opposed to playing the game. There's similar ideas because you've got your settings done. So in both those contexts, after you get your settings done, you want to look into the same place. You look to the bottom right where it says, I'm done with this map setting. What do I want to do now? Do I want to launch, or do I want to save this one and start another map? So I think that you can have like a half a button next to it that says save game or add to queue. So let's go into editing here. Let's say add to queue. And then we're going to say that it could also be a partial button next to the launch game button. Next to or attached to. Okay, so we're running with that. We say we've got our settings, we've clicked add to queue. After we click add to queue, what happens? We have a game queue, which is added below the waiting section. So we've got the waiting section. Below that, we're adding in a game queue into this big open area down here. And now in that game queue, the header uses a unique color. So we've got red, blue, white, gray, and then maybe a purple or pink or something. Doesn't really matter right now. But it's a unique color that has your game queue. We're saying instead of create game queue here, we're saying add to queue. Add to queue. So clicking add to queue will take the map preview and add it to the first slot in the game queue section. So you've got your game queue, you've got your first item. Let me just make a fake thing so we can see what's going on here. We're going to duplicate you. And we're going to say this one is called, oops. Game queue. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so now we can just look at that a little differently. So in the game queue, you would take the map preview, which would be this little item here, and you would have that show up here. Would you put a number next to it? Would you just have it be on its own? I think it's pretty self-explanatory if it's just a map preview that the first one is your first map. So all maps in the game queue are seen as a preview image of the map. If the map is set to random, a large question mark is shown. I think that makes sense because if you have a random map selected here, it'll put up a question mark. So just doing that same thing right here seems fine. Hovering over the preview will list out all of the settings attached to that map for all players, not only the group leader. So even if you're not the leader, if the group leader has set something up, you can still see what these settings will be. And I think that's true for everybody. I think if you go to an incognito, you can still see, yeah, you can still see the settings if you do that. So that makes sense that everyone will be able to see it. Nice try, Moosin. Nice try. Clicking on the preview will highlight the preview in yellow. Okay, so now if you are the group leader, this should be clarified. So if you are not the group leader, you can still see all the settings on hover. But if you are the group leader and you click on that preview, it will take that preview and it will put all the settings from that preview onto the right side here. So we use the same UI that we have here, which is fine. It's not great, but it's okay. And we say that I want to edit this, all that. So what do you do if I'm editing a map and it's already saved to the game queue, would it just be like you would keep it highlighted to show that you're editing it? But then what do you do with that? Would it be automatically? Once you click on something, it automatically saves it? I think that would have to be the case. Right? Yeah, let's keep that. So now we're saying allows it to be edited. We should have done this in a document. I hate this. Ugh. And then we're saying under this, no save button. Once a map is in the queue, any adjustments go straight into the queue on that map. This is my OnlyFans? Not quite. It's close. When the first map is added to the queue, the active settings will display that map and the preview is selected in the queue. To add another map, a large plus sign is added to the end of the queue. So we're saying we've got our first map, settings up, we click add to queue, it adds the preview there, and then next to that, we have a big plus sign where you click on that and it will open up the settings for the next map. So that makes me think though, is there a reason to have an add to queue button, or do you just have whatever the current map is, you just also show it here at the same time and you have a one game queue, right? Does that make sense? So it's not even creating a queue, it's just that every time you make a group, 69 for the OnlyFans. I don't know how to do that. I don't know what to do with that. Thank you though. For the bits, I think, is that what they're called? I've never actually received that before, Platt. Appreciate that. How many doodles for bathwater jar? Hate that. Hate that with a burning passion. Anyway, back to the point. I think that instead of having you create a queue, you just say that everything that you do is a queue with the default setting of one game. And then if you want to make a new one, so you serious now? All right, so we're making game queues, saying presets. Move over to here. I'm just trying to visualize this. I'm not doing a good job of visualizing this in my head. I'm not sold on the launch game button being down here now, but I don't think there's a better way to connect these two ideas. No, Grant, shut up. Not group game states. We're not doing that. I only have 10 minutes left? Oh my god, I didn't even look at the time. This is terrible. Terrible stream. Okay, add a plus sign to the end of the queue. Fine. Clicking a larger plus sign will reset the settings to the default. So if you click on the plus sign, you've got your map with all the settings already set up. I click plus, it wipes everything out. And it looks as if I had just created a new group. But instead of it just being a new group, I lost my group, whatever. Instead of it being a new group, you still have the first game, and you have a second game that opens up with random selected because that's your default setting, and all of your usual everything here. So I'm getting paid for it now? Yeah, I'm getting paid 69 bits, whatever that's worth. I have no idea what that's worth, but thank you. So you click plus, it adds another map in to the queue. It goes back to the default settings, as you can see on the right side here. And then you can make all your edits, so you select whatever you want. If you pick a map, then the map preview will show up there as well. And you can do that as many times as you want for as many games as you want. So every time you have a map, there will always be a plus sign at the end of whatever list of maps you have selected. Fine. When a map game is selected, duplicate or delete. So maybe you added a map but you don't like it. You can click on a little delete button. Would that be on the preview maybe? Probably. I think that would be over the preview. In the upper right corner of the preview by the group leader only, obviously. So then you've got upper right corner of the preview. If you want to duplicate it, so you add it in the same exact map a second time, fine. And then if you want to delete it, it just makes sure that you want to make sure that you actually clicked that button. Now, this is the part that gets a little more tricky. Between each map preview is a set of drop-down lists with icons displayed. The words and icons are visible, but when you're not opening the drop-down, it's just the icon that represents it. So this is describing what happens between games. And I think that we're going to add in what Josh just suggested here. So between games, right now we have two different options. There is back to group, which just is what you would expect to happen right now in a private game. When a game ends, it goes back to group. That is the current behavior. So that would be the first option. That would be the default option. The next option is play next map. And this is more what happens in casual games. You finish a game, it sends you back to the joiner, it sends you back into another game. So we could do that very easily in groups and say that instead of going back to group, you just go back to the joiner and then right back in to the next game. If it's the last game in the queue, so you've got your, say, 5 different maps, all whatever, at the end of the last one, you have two options. You have back to group or you have restart, where you can go back to the first game after the last game, which could be nice if you want to play one map on repeat. You can just put it in once and say afterwards go back to the start, and it would just constantly loop through that one map. So the third option that I like what Josh just suggested is a timer on the next game. And let's put that as a option here. Whoops. Delayed next game, delayed start. What would you call that? Delayed continue, maybe. And this would be a clock. What would you do with this clock here? You would say that select minutes, seconds. Would you go back to group and then launch again, or would you keep them in the lobby, or would you go back to the joiner? Where would you put these players for that delay? I'll get to that in a second, Croissant. That's a good suggestion. After a game ends, I don't think that you can do it in the game process itself, because that would result in a longer replay file, which is, it causes other problems. So you have to either wait in the group or wait in the joiner. I think that the easier option is to send them back to the group. And then we can address what Croissant said. After the game ends, players go back to group. While in the group, there is a timer on the launch game button. When it reaches 0, the game is launched automatically. And then under that, we can say group leader has the option to launch at any point. Wow, I cannot type today. Any point during this countdown without waiting. And so that means that you go back to group. Because you selected minutes, seconds, there's a timer for whatever that length of time is. And then when it hits 0, it launches. If the group leader says, okay, we're ready anyway, even though the timer hasn't hit 0, you can click launch at any point and it will launch the game then. And so that addresses the use case of the leagues, where they have a lot of problems with delays between games, because players will disappear, they'll go to the bathroom, whatever, which is fine. But there are rules for keeping things on track that are kind of hard to enforce right now. So this would build those rules in and say that we're going to launch in 2 minutes after that other game ends, no matter what. It's not something we're going to say, oh, we pressed it too early or something. It's automatic. It's written into the code that it's going to launch that game in 2 minutes. But if you wanted to launch right away, then you can just do that. I think Grant has a really good point. Can you pause that timer? I think the group leader does need the ability to pause the timer as well. Pause or remove. I think if you remove it, it's just done. And then they have to click play now for it to happen again. Otherwise, you have to have another set of UI things for them to type in a new delay afterwards. I think that it's just end it now or not. Cancel a timer, which will require they press launch to start the next game. Hello, Glass Marble. I routinely use machine control software that has a similar queue system, runs sequences, has variables, conditionals, depending on file input. Yeah, that's kind of what we're doing. We just use presets, which is easier than a whole file. But yeah, same idea. So then we've got, just to go through that again. Oh, we're over 90 minutes already? My God. Sorry, guys. Game ends. You go back to group. There's a timer on the launch button. The group leader can hover over that timer and it will either say launch now or cancel timer. And then they would have to click launch now again. That's fine. That all sounds good to me. Then with teams, that was the other thing. This is also between maps on the preview. Drop down that says randomized teams, swap teams, or same team. So like the leagues like to go red, blue, alternating. So you can just say between each game, take the red team, put them on blue, take the blue team, put them on red. That's very easy to do. Or if you wanted to randomize teams because you're running a different tournament or something, that is fine. Iceplat, I cannot stop you if you want to be unserious. So we've got our drop down. Sorry, we've got our previews. We've got our drop downs between them, just those two, and they show the icon. If you click on the drop down, it will open up those options. You can pick which one you want. All of that makes sense. If you don't like the order two games are good, maybe game one and game two are backwards, a little arrow between them, like it says here, that allows you to just switch two of the games to reorder the maps. In the game queue header, we're gonna have to change this. Import, export, and aggregate scores. So I think that the aggregate scores portion stays as is. So just to give us the visual one more time, we're saying that in here, you get your game queue, a button that says aggregate scores here, which just means that if the score after game one is 1-0, the score at the start of game two is also 1-0, with the alternative be that you are removing the score. And I'm thinking about that more. I think that I actually want to have that be a third drop down in between your previews, right? Because you've got, after one game ends, do I switch the teams? Fine. Do I go back to group? Fine. What do I do with the score? And I'm thinking about the old MLTP format where you had halves and you wanted game two to start with the same score as game one ended with. So if game one ends 5-4, game two starts 5-4. And I think that if you have it be aggregate stats for the whole series, that doesn't work, because if you have game one to game two, it works, but then game three is half one of game two. So you want the score to start over there. So you would have the drop down between game one and game two where it says keep the score, but the drop down between game two and game three, you would say remove the score so that you don't keep that score in the first half of your game three. So you can decide it between every half that you want if you want to keep the previous game or lose the previous game's score. So let's figure out a way to word that more appropriately in here. You would say teams, and then the third one, it would be score, and then aggregate score. Icon is a plus sign. Start the next game with the score of the previous game. if team switching, also switch the scores to stay with the same team. And then you would have the default, which is restart score. Return icon is a 0 maybe. Start the game 0, 0. Okay, and then we would get rid of aggregate scores. You look like an approachable Ryan Reynolds. What? I don't know if I'm more approachable than Ryan Reynolds, but I'll take it. Paul Rudd. That you're just flattering me. No. I reject your compliment. TagPro needs an overworld. Why are the balls here? What's the purpose? Must the flag be captured? From whom are we capturing it? Yeah, I like that. Work on that. Get back to me. Anyway, 3 drop downs. You've got your between games, what to do. What do you do with teams? What do you do with score? Is there anything else people can think of that should be changing where one game it matters to have that thing in the next game? Anyone think of anything else? I can't. So I'm going to move on. In the game queue header, import queue and export queue. So my question is, do we keep that down here or do we put it up with group preset? Because we've talked about potentially using the same UI. If you have a group preset, what it does is it populates this whole thing here. So maybe I have a queue and I want to add game 5 to my queue. I would just want to add in a preset that would get all these settings. So I think you would have to keep them separate because group presets are map specific, and this is the map editor on the right here. So this is saying I want these settings to go into this map slot. So if I selected a new map slot and I had all the defaults, I could still go to a group preset and paste it in and it would populate all my settings for that specific map slot. So I don't think it makes sense to have this group preset also be for the entire series, because then you're coming down here to edit them, but you could also just overwrite all of them up here. I think that it's better to have import and export here and then have your single map stuff over here. Because the codes would be the same. That's not a big deal. You have your import and export would be a longer string of presets with some extra code for how to handle the between game logic. But I think that it's more intuitive if you keep the game queue stuff in the game queue section and you keep the map stuff in the preset section. We would have to change group preset to map preset probably, because it would be specific to that one map where you could be having multiple maps in the same. Let's add that in. Change group preset to map preset. Did I use the word preset anywhere? I guess not. Okay. Other changes. The group preset button should be renamed map preset. And then note this is still map specific. A preset can be used while adding a map to the queue, and it will only impact the current map being edited. And it says the queue should be considered as a sequence of presets alternating between map preset and between game preset. I fully agree with that. We would also need checks to ensure that there is logic to add in a default if there is no between map selected, but that's a later problem. Maybe game preset, if presets can be swapped between games with this queue system. Could you elaborate on that, Josh? map preset, because there's a presets for the map settings, but you're saying game preset. Is a game different than a map? Is that a different concept? I'm not sure that it is different enough. What is it? What is a game in this context? It's, I guess it's the game settings, not the map settings, because the map is one of the game settings. So game preset includes your map option, not the other way around. Your map preset doesn't include your game options. Your game preset includes your map and the settings that will be applied to that map. Yeah, I think you're, yeah, good thoughts. Yeah, let's change the word map down there as well. Good. Okay, I think I like where that left off. I think just a little tune up in that old spec. Again, I made that a long time ago, but we haven't gotten to it. Now that we have presets, it's much more accessible. So we're already over time, which is so sad. I don't know how I managed to talk for that long about nothing happening this week, but yeah. So let me just make sure I didn't get any questions on the forum real quick. I did not. So if you have any questions you'd like me to answer on stream next week, that is pinned in the chat here. It's also in the Reddit comment section or description, and a YouTube description as well. So feel free to fill out that form and I will talk about whatever you want me to talk about. But otherwise, I think that's all I got for you this week. So next week we will be on putting the final touches in for the seasonal changes that I talked about at the start of this stream. So if you want to back up and look at that, take a look. Yeah, that's going to be the majority of what we're working on for the next week. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Appreciate you taking the time out of your Friday. Hopefully you enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have a good weekend, and I will see you all later.